as time passes and couples grow older together. The way we experience intimacy evolves in subtle but profound ways, and many men over 60 begin to sense that while their desire for connection remains, their partner's responses may feel different, more quiet, less obvious, and often harder to interpret. And this leads to a common but rarely spoken fear that they no longer know how to please the woman they love, that the old touch no longer stirs the same spark that the gestures once met with. Closeness are now met with hesitation or even indifference. And in that quiet uncertainty, many men retreat, become cautious, touch less often, or simply give up try altogether. Not because they no longer care, but because they don't want to do the wrong thing or appear out of sync with their partner's needs. And what makes this even more complicated is that most women over 60 aren't openly talking about the kinds of touch that still bring them deep pleasure, not because they don't have those desires, but because for many, those desires have become buried beneath years of caregiving, body changes, medical issues, emotional fatigue, or the belief that pleasure is no longer relevant at their age. And so both partners silently step back from physical intimacy without ever having the conversation that could bring them closer. And yet beneath the surface, women over 60 are still deeply wired for touch. Not just any touch, but specific kinds of touch that feel nurturing, respectful, slow, and attuned. And what urologists and intimacy experts have quietly uncovered is that there are key areas on a woman's body, some physical, some emotional, that remain highly sensitive to connection and pleasure well into the later decades of life. But these areas are not always the ones you might expect, and they're often not the ones portrayed in movies or talked about openly, because women in this age group often feel uncomfortable articulating what they really want, not due to shame, necessarily, but due to years of silence, disconnection, or feeling that their pleasure has been deprioritized in the rhythm of long relationships. But when these zones are touched with care, with intention, and without a rushed agenda, they can reawaken something extraordinary, a deep sense of being seen, loved, cherished, and alive in one's body again. And the first area that often holds immense emotional and physical sensitivity is not the breasts or thighs, but the hands, and not just holding hands, but the slow, exploratory massage of the fingers, palms, and wrists, because the hands are not only filled with nerve endings that can send ripples of sensation throughout the entire body, but they're also symbolic of care, creativity, and agency. And when a partner gently traces the knuckles, presses into the pads of the fingers, or runs soft circles around a wrist bone, it activates not only a pleasurable physical response, but a feeling of being tenderly known, of being cared for in a way that doesn't demand anything in return. And this kind of touch can be especially powerful when done without expectation, without it needing to lead anywhere, because for women over 60, what often creates the most arousal isn't fast or firm physical touch, but slowness, safety, and sincerity, and the hands become a gateway into the body's deeper emotional terrain, signaling that the touch is not just about sex, but about intimacy, about returning to one another after years of distance or silence. And as the hands begin to soften and relax under this kind of attention, something in the nervous system also relaxes, the guard comes down, the breath deepens, the heart rate slows, and this shift opens the door for deeper connection elsewhere, such as the neck and upper shoulders, which are the next highly sensitive zones that often go overlooked but hold tremendous potential for pleasure and connection, especially in women who carry tension, grief, or emotional weight in this area. And when a man approaches this space with his fingertips, with slow and gentle pressure at the base of the skull or long, gliding movements across the trapezius muscles, he is not just easing physical discomfort. He is communicating something profound, that he sees the stress she carries, that he wants to relieve it, that he is here to give without taking, and that act alone can bring a woman back into her body in a way that feels healing and even erotic, not because it is overtly sexual, but because it awakens a long-forgotten part of her nervous system that longs to feel safe, seen, and softly stimulated. And this is something men over 60 can do without needing to become experts in anatomy or massage therapy. It is more about intention than technique, more about presence than pressure, and the more attuned you become to her breath, to the subtle ways her body responds, the more she will feel free to relax and let go. And when a woman feels safe enough to let go, arousal becomes a natural byproduct, not something forced, not something mechanical, but something that rises on its own as a result of feeling held, respected, and honored. And this is why so many older couples rediscover passion not through new techniques, but through returning to the basics, holding hands, touching the neck, sitting close without rushing, simply being in the moment together. And the irony is that the slower and less goal-oriented the touch, the more effective it becomes, because it gives the body time to remember its own pleasure pathways, which never truly go away. They simply become quiet when not activated regularly. And so the key to reigniting passion and emotional closeness after 60 often begins not in the bedroom, but in these quiet moments of unspoken tenderness, where the hands meet, where the shoulders soften, and where years of distance melt away in the warmth of touch that says, I see you, I remember you, I want to know you again, not as you were, but as you are now. And that message, when spoken through touch, has the power to bring a woman back into her own pleasure, her own body, and her own vibrant, sensual self. And as you continue to build this foundation of trust, comfort, and physical openness through the hands and the neck, the next area that often holds deep layers of emotional meaning and untapped sensuality is the lower back and sacral region. A place that is not only physically tender for many women after 60 due to postural shifts, long hours of caregiving, or changes in pelvic alignment, but also energetically charged as it sits near the base of the spine, where the body stores both tension and pleasure potential in gentle, slow strokes along the sides of the lower back, right where the pelvis begins to curve, can feel not only soothing, but also deeply grounding for a woman who may have gone years without receiving this kind of non-demanding, intentional touch. And when the hands travel gently across this space, perhaps using warm oil or simply soft fingertips, there's often an emotional release, because this is where the body remembers long hours spent holding others, where the weight of daily life has settled into the tissues. And when touched with care, this part of the body responds with a kind of breath-like release, the muscles letting go, the nervous system sighing with relief. And that release can be both healing and arousing at once, especially when the man doing the touching is not rushing or seeking an outcome, but simply being present with every breath, every shift, every pause, And this is what women over 60 rarely say out loud, that they are starving for. This kind of mindful, generous touch, not just sexually, but in the sense of wanting to feel adored again, to feel like their body still matters, to be seen not just as a caregiver or a retiree or a grandmother, but as a woman alive in her body, worthy of pleasure. And it is in these overlooked spaces like the base of the spine or the sides of the waist that so much sensation still lives, waiting to be reawakened. And when a man places his hands there, not with urgency, but with patience, allowing the skin to warm, the muscles to soften, and the energy to build slowly, something stirs in a woman that is both physical and emotional. And the message becomes clear. This body is still a place of beauty, still a place of desire, still worthy of attention. And that kind of recognition can rewire a woman's entire sense of confidence and openness, because when the lower back begins to feel safe again, the pelvis follows and the hips start to open. And this brings us to another place of powerful sensitivity that older men often overlook in their partners, the hips and outer thighs, not in a sexualized or aggressive way, but in a nurturing, rhythmical way that connects back to the body's primal memory of being held, supported, and embraced, and gentle circular motions around the tops of the hips or soft pressing along the outer thighs, especially while lying side by side or in a relaxed seated position, helps to break through emotional armor that many women carry unconsciously in this region, because over time, especially after childbirth, trauma, or years of disconnection, this part of the body becomes tight, rigid, even numb, and many women won't say this out loud, but they long for someone to help them feel it again. Not just sexually, but as a part of their body that is still deserving of attention and healing. And when the touch is slow, present, and unhurried, a woman can begin to relax into that awareness and rediscover parts of herself she thought were lost. And this is where connection deepens, not just physical arousal, but emotional closeness, the kind that brings couples back into a shared rhythm. And once the hips and lower back begin to release, the rest of the body often follows, and the next space that comes alive is the belly. Not because it is traditionally erotic, but because it is vulnerable. And for many women over 60, the belly is a place of great insecurity, where age has left its marks in the form of soft skin, extra weight, or surgical scars. And yet it is also the center of the body, the origin of life, the holder of digestion, intuition, and emotion. And when a partner gently lays a warm hand on the belly and breathes together with her, it creates a resonance, a syncing of nervous systems that signals deep connection. And if you slowly circle the hand clockwise, following the path of the colon and breath, the belly begins to soften, not just physically, but emotionally. And in that softening is trust, is openness, is a rekindling of sensuality that has nothing to do with performance and everything to do with presence. And what makes this so impactful is that women rarely expect their partner to touch this part of them with love, without judgment, without trying to fix or hide anything. And when that happens, it speaks to something sacred, an honoring of the body as it is now, not as it was before. And this kind of touch reclaims confidence, because it says, I see you, all of you, and I still want to touch you, to know you, to bring you pleasure. And that message, unspoken but deeply felt, is the kind of medicine that no pill or doctor can prescribe. And once this message lands in her body, the response is unmistakable. Her breath changes, her energy shifts, her body leans in instead of away, and her eyes begin to shine with a kind of light that many men haven't seen in years. And the irony is that this light was never gone. It was simply waiting to be reignited by touch that is tender, deliberate, and full of presence. And in these moments, arousal becomes a natural unfolding, not a goal to chase, but a wave to ride. And this is the secret truth many older women wish their partners knew: that the most powerful form of intimacy is built not in the chase for climax, but in the quiet unfolding of safety, connection, and being touched in ways that remind them they are still very much alive. And as that wave of warmth and reconnection moves through her lower back, hips, and soft belly, something deeper begins to awaken. Not just the sensual awareness of her physical body, but the reemergence of emotional intimacy, the kind she may not have experienced in years, the kind that doesn't come from words or flowers or well-meaning compliments, but from being touched with genuine reverence, with no rush, no pressure, no hidden agenda, only presence. And it is in this state of soft, emotional openness that her chest, her collarbone, and the space around her heart become deeply receptive, not necessarily in a sexual way at first, but in a vulnerable, honest, and spiritually charged way that many men don't even realize holds the key to their partner's deepest sense of connection. Because after 60, many women have developed a subtle kind of armor around their hearts. Not because they don't want intimacy, but because they have been hurt, dismissed, ignored, or simply gone too long without the kind of closeness that asks nothing in return. And when a man lays his hand gently at the top of her chest, perhaps just resting his palm over the sternum while both of them breathe together, it bypasses language and taps directly into the nervous system's core sense of safety. And when that touch is followed by soft, gliding motions across the upper chest, across the space just above the breasts and under the collarbones, using fingertips or the back of the hand, or even warm oil and slow spirals of motion, it sends a wave of relaxation and emotional validation through her body. And this, in turn, begins to build trust not just in the man's touch, but in her own body's ability to receive and feel again. And this area, the space around the heart, the collarbones, and the sternum, is often one of the most neglected zones in both romantic and medical touch. And yet it holds powerful emotional charge because it sits so close to where she's held her grief, her joys, her losses, and her quiet resilience through decades of life. And so when this area is finally touched with the kind of care and reverence it deserves, something inside her melts. Her eyes may soften or close. Her hands may reach to hold yours back. And you'll know in that moment that you've touched something sacred. And it's this kind of physical emotional intimacy that rebuilds the bridge between two people who may have grown distant. Not out of lack of love, but simply out of unspoken wounds and years of missed signals. And what follows is often an openness, a sense of wanting more. Not necessarily more intensity, but more depth, more slowness, more closeness. And from this space, her body becomes more willing to receive pleasure in places that once seemed off limits or too sensitive or too vulnerable, such as the inner thighs, the soft folds behind the knees, or the area around the ears and temples, which may seem surprising, but are often extraordinarily receptive to touch after 60. When approached gently and without expectations, because these areas are rich with nerve endings. And more importantly, they signal to the brain that intimacy is being expressed through care and attention, not just arousal. And this is a critical shift that many men miss. The difference between touch that seeks to stimulate versus touch that seeks to listen. And the more you touch in order to listen, the more her body will respond. Because women over 60 are deeply intuitive, and they can feel instantly when a man is touching from presence versus performance. And this distinction becomes even more vital as hormones shift, as skin becomes thinner, as energy changes, and as emotional needs become even more layered and complex. And when a man chooses to slow down and ask his partner with his hands, not his words, "What feels good now?" her body will answer in its own time, through the relaxing of muscles, the deepening of breath, the way she leans into your hand instead of away from it. And often this is the first time in years that she realizes she can still feel this much, that her body is not done experiencing pleasure or passion or closeness. And that realization becomes a kind of rebirth, not just sexually, but personally, because it reconnects her to a part of herself that the world has told her was no longer needed, no longer attractive, no longer valuable. And that reconnection is priceless, because it doesn't just improve intimacy between partners, it restores vitality to her entire being. She begins to walk differently, speak differently, look in a mirror differently, not because she has changed outwardly, but because she has been reminded through your touch that she still matters, that her body is still a source of love and joy and delight. And once that message is received, her confidence blooms, her affection grows. And the entire emotional climate of the relationship shifts from duty or distance to curiosity, to playfulness, to renewed desire. And this is not fantasy. It is biology, it is emotion, it is the human need to be held and touched and cherished. And the man who learns to awaken these often hidden zones through her hands, her back, her hips, her chest, and now her face, her scalp, her temples, becomes not just a lover, but a healer, not just a husband or partner, but someone she feels safe exploring the deepest parts of herself with again. And all of this, every single part of this beautiful dance of reconnection, starts not with asking for more from her, but by giving more time, more patience, more presence, more touch without agenda. And if you do that, if you begin there, you may find that the version of her who responds is even more vibrant, more expressive, and more sensual than you ever imagined possible after 60, because she has always been waiting, not for perfection, not for youth, but for this, for permission to feel again. And as the journey of rediscovery through touch continues, it becomes undeniably clear that the places women love to be touched after 60 are not just about zones of arousal or maps of sensation, but portals into emotional safety, permission, and connection that runs far deeper than skin. Because in these moments of slowed presence, where the temples are cradled in the palms, where the forehead is stroked with gentleness, where the scalp is massaged slowly in circles that evoke a childhood memory of being soothed, it is not just a woman's body that responds, but her nervous system, her trust, her ability to surrender, her willingness to open again to the person she shares life with. And often, in these touches that have no goal, no endpoint, no performance attached, something long forgotten rises gently back to the surface. Perhaps a spark of laughter, a glint of playfulness in her. I desire to give back, to lean in, to kiss again with intention, to make love not as a routine, but as a choice, because she now knows she is still wanted, still beautiful in a way that goes far beyond what a mirror reflects. And for many men who feared they had lost her touch, lost her openness, or lost their own ability to connect, these experiences bring tears, memories, gratitude, and a profound realization that intimacy in the later years of life can actually be richer, fuller, more layered, and more soul-deep than anything experienced in youth. Not because of wild passion or physical prowess, but because of what it means to truly be present, to see and be seen without masks, without pretense, and without fear. And perhaps that is the greatest secret of all, that the very things that seem to fade with age, like speed, urgency, and novelty, are replaced by deeper treasures like depth, patience, and emotional intelligence. And when those are paired with touch that honors and explores rather than demands and expects, something exquisite happens between two people, something almost sacred. In its simplicity, and the woman who once felt invisible or self-conscious or too changed by time to be touched, now stands before her partner, not only receptive but radiant, grounded in the knowing that she is still worthy of every bit of affection, still alive in her body, still full of feeling and desire. And for the man who gave her that message not through speeches but through hands that listened, breath that slowed, and time that was fully given, there's a reward far greater than physical pleasure. It is the reawakening of closeness, the return of emotional harmony, the joy of rediscovering each other in a stage of life where most people wrongly believe that such things are over. And it is here, in these honest, skin-to-skin conversations without words, that couples find not just healing from the disconnects of the past, but a new foundation for the years ahead, built not on roles or routines or expectations, but on the simple truth that we are never too old to be touched with, reverence never too distant to be brought close again, never too changed to be loved in the bodies we live in now. And that truth carries a freedom, a lightness, and an intimacy that even youth cannot replicate, because it is earned, cherished, and deeply felt. And it is this kind of touch, this kind of quiet, attuned, respectful touch that reaffirms life itself. That makes a woman feel beautiful, not because someone says she is, but because someone shows her she is day after day, hand after hand, with no expiration date on her worth, no end point to her sensual self. And if there's one message to take from all of this, is that aging does not strip us of our right to closeness, to passion, to tenderness. It only asks us to become more aware, more intentional, more generous with the ways we connect, and for the man willing to give that, who dares to explore the map of his partner's body not as a means to an end, but as a way of saying, I still see you, I still love you, I still want you. He will receive back a kind of intimacy, gratitude, and joy that only deepens with time. And in that space, touch becomes more than sensation. It becomes devotion. And for those in the later seasons of life, there may be no greater love than that which is felt not in words or actions alone, but through the quiet, sacred language of touch that whispers again and again. You are still here, you are still loved, and you are still more than enough.